empowering you to build better lives. That's what we do. Welcome to today's Empower Podcast, the podcast that's dedicated to finding people's superpowers and what motivates them. I'm so honored to be here with Rebecca Fahr. Rebecca is an 8-year Team Elite, COE Circle of Excellence 2 member, and a 3-time Platinum Elite. Rebecca, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
I'm so excited because we're up here at Live, and we are taking the opportunity to grab some of our greatest leaders. You've been up on stage sharing your story and all of that, so you should be warmed up. And so we gave you a call and said, Rebecca, can you come and sit down for a little chat? And you were all in.
I was very excited. I've listened to prior podcast episodes,
couple of them.
so I've been like, ooh, if I get the opportunity, it'll be an honor, but I'm ready.
Well, this is our honor and our opportunity to get deep into your psychological state and the trauma that you experienced as a child. Kathy is upset about that. She doesn't like it. She doesn't agree with it, but that's what we're doing on this podcast. So Becca, tell us a little bit about you and about your upbringing. We always start there because I want to know the person behind the person. Yeah. So tell me about your parents, your siblings. What kind of home did you grow up in?
Well, I'm from Oklahoma, born and raised, a small town of Broken Arrow. And, I grew up in a very loving home, never lacked for encouragement or support or parents that empowered you truly. And I have a younger brother. We're 3 years age gap. Okay. And it was middle class. My parents own a business that my dad is the president of. Okay. My mom for a time played a role with the company, but most of the time she stayed at home. And that's part of where my desire to become a stay-at-home mom came from. She did not stay working at home forever. In high school, she did go back to work during that time. But that's where I saw entrepreneurship for the first time and learned some of the do's and the don'ts, or what I did like, what I didn't. But just a very loving home, went to church every week, played soccer growing up. I started later than most people, and I actually don't mention that part very often, but I was several years behind. Caught up, and then I played from 8 years old all the way through college. And soccer shaped a lot of me because I'll just be really candid, and I don't know that you even know this about me, but school was very easy to me. But I was very introverted, and I did all the studying and all the work that they asked of me. So I excelled in school, and I was one of my high school's valedictorians. And if it had not been for soccer, I would not have been very socially good. That is where I learned how to interact with my peers.
As a team, as a teammate.
Yes.
And in soccer. And by the way, so we're going to, as we do this podcast, people will be listening on Apple, Spotify, and they're going to be hearing a bunch of craziness in the background. And so I'll apologize on the podcast for this because, well, this is live, right? So we're at a live event with 5,000 people. It's going to be noisy. So we'll do our best to work through the noise and not get distracted. So, okay, so born to a father and mother, entrepreneurial family. You saw the effects of that on a home in terms of your dad's always working, your mom has to be, stay-at-home mom, raising their kids, making sure you're a good student, doing all the activities, the soccer and all of that. And you said your schooling was great, you were no problem there, but it was the social side of it. And if it wasn't for soccer, so I'm recapping in case people hadn't heard that. So let's go a little there. So what about soccer taught you the social skills that obviously today you thrive with in your business?
It really was the team. I wanted to connect with my teammates because that's the only way to have a successful soccer team.
For sure.
And then therefore that translates into all different team aspects of life. But it was truly where I formed all my lifelong friendships too. I look at some of my very core friendships today that are decades long now. They're my soccer teammates. And so it was just how to get to know them. And we had a common place. It was the soccer team, and we had a common goal because we were all competitive, type A girls. And so you bring what you bring to the table. It helped me learn that you don't all have to be the same because we had really outgoing personalities, etc. And that was not me, but but we could all coexist on
Yeah.
the team, and we needed each other.
Yeah. So, and you ended up playing D1
Yes.
soccer. So I don't know the soccer stat. My daughter, Ava, that was just up on stage with us, so I know the volleyball D1 stats because Ava plays D1 volleyball, and it's 1.6% of all female volleyball players end up moving to D1. So less than 2% of all people that play go. Do you know the soccer stat? It's probably similar.
I would assume.
Similar size teams and
Yes.
and the like. So if I relate that to our business and even just to our podcast sessions, I'm going to say somewhere of our successful leadership here, I would say the percentage is more like 10 to 15%, maybe even 20% of our top leadership come from D1 or competitive sports. And so we're talking maybe 5, 6, 7 times greater percentage that have come from a professional sports or at least a serious sporting event. We also have competitive pianists that have played, that have done well, that I know, musicians that have done that. But there's something about competitive sports and this business that interrelate. What do you think that is?
I've actually talked about this before, so I have theories because I look at some of the people I've brought into New Skin as well, and they fit what you just described. And one of them, I think, is in those competitive atmospheres, you have to have a goal, and usually it's longer term, but you're not going to reach it right away. Like for D1, that was a goal of mine that I set in middle school. It's obviously not something you're going to get to by even the following season, and that you have to work up to it. It's also something that you can see people that have gone before you. So there's a standard set for you that then you can start to work towards that standard, which is always something I have always wanted in different aspects, and especially in New Skin, is I just want to know, what did it take for someone to do X? If that's my goal, or above it is the goal, but at least so that helps me start the stepping stones. And I think that's one thing that's instilled in athletes. So delayed gratification, having a standard, and just there's a grit that comes from those over time, that if you're truly competitive, I mean, we say this in our family all the time, we play till I win. And it's like, which one of us said that? But we all have the mentality. Because I will unashamedly say I am one of the most competitive people you'll find if I care. If it's something I care, I will not let go of it until I win. And I think that's 100% a trait you need, especially in our New Skin business. And it's not a competition amongst ourselves.
No.
And I will say, this is kind of a segue, but early in my New Skin business, that's how I thought, because that's how it had been with soccer. So that was all I knew, is competing against people not on my team. So if you weren't on my New Skin team, you were competition. And so it's something I had to work my way through there. And it's something I still have to check myself on, because it's just an instinct.
There are so many things that you've just covered, and I hope we're going to get to all of them here in a second. But you talk about delayed gratification, having a goal, and grit, which I think absolutely is critical in the, at least from a business application point of view. Delayed gratification, having the goal, and then having the grit, determination to do that, and learning that. The Olympics are going right now. We had the World Cup on more recently. I was listening to an interview of an elite track athlete, and she was talking about something similar to what Ricky Salvage talked about on stage last night. Ricky, as we know,
love her,
for the audience, was a swimmer at the age of 16, tried out for the Olympics, didn't qualify by 0.02 of a second, and then was told basically, you're going to peak too late as a 16-year-old because Olympics come every 4 years. So very similar conversation. And this track athlete pushed through that and decided to go, and she's still competing. I think she's 27 now, so well beyond 16 and tapping out, right? Or topping out. But what was interesting in kind of listening through that, she made a comment there, which was, so many people my age, in fact, I've heard Simone Biles talk about it as well. So many people at my age, and not my age, I'm way too beyond this, but at that athlete level, the D1 athlete level, they don't then know what to do with all of these skills, having a goal, delayed gratification. And I am always curious, why aren't we flooding every business in the world with D1 athletes because, and especially our business here at New Skin, because there's enormous markets. And I don't know of a more adjacent business model that requires setting long-term goals, delayed gratification, and having grit and determination to do it. So anyways, I think there's a huge untapped market there.
I agree.
I just don't know how we
hear it live that one of my best friends, one of my top leaders, Abby Gibson. She would be a great guest on this sometime.
We'll do that.
She actually said that she picked up on the theme as well from so many of the leaders that were on stage.
And we need to drive that first. So now let's go back. You said, and you thought you'd get away with it. You said, I started later than most at 8 years old, and you worked through that. So tell me, what effect did that have on you, and what effect has that had on you in your life?
Let's just
Because it clearly did. It clearly did, or you wouldn't have said most people don't know this. In other words, you intentionally don't talk about it much.
No, because most people that ended up playing at higher levels of soccer, I later came to learn most of them started at 4 or 5 years old. And I was naturally not the gifted athlete. I had to work for that to be developed over time. And so it's a funny story about how I worked into getting into sports. It was more my parents wanted me to find an activity because I did want to be on just read a book, which is great. I love reading books, but like expand as a kid. And so I started soccer, and they were like, you hate being outside, you hate sweating and hate running, so this will be short-lived. But my friends played, so I jumped into that. My first year was nothing because I was the only player that had never played. So I played the minimum, not by my choice. The coach only played me the minimum that's required. And then this was the first time in my life I ever had someone outside of my family that invested in me, that saw something. And I'm not sure what he saw, but it was just someone who was taking on our team for the next year. And we were 9 years old at this point. And he told my parents that he would help me become one of the top players in our city. And I don't know where, again, and I've lost touch with him, so I can't even go back and ask him. But it just helped me learn that it didn't matter that I started years and years behind people, that truly, if I wanted it enough, you can put it the extra time if it's worth it. And I fell in love with the sport. And it also taught me, which I really respect and appreciate with other people in New Skin and other places, is you don't have to be the most naturally gifted. I would rather a work ethic more so than the one that just seems to be a magical unicorn person, because that's my story in so many areas, New Skin included, but I learned it in soccer. And so that's the part that you just dug that out of me, that I haven't really dug into that for myself, and I can't even tell you how long.
Do you think, so this is my theory, and again, I've had multiple guests on this that have had similar experiences of not being the best, starting late, being behind the curve. You know, Jesse Itzler, we just had him talking. He said this, I was never good at anything. And I've said that about myself. Never good, never great at anything decent enough to get by. But it seems to me the recurring theme that I see in these discussions we have with all different types of people is that there's something about being proficient enough, and then it's the grit, determination, work ethic to push through that seems to be the bigger thing, the grit side of it. Right?
Keep you in the game long enough. And I learned that in soccer. I had coaches that instilled it in us that I had for years and years, that if you just stick around long enough in the game and you're the team that's just grinding it out, you can find a way to win. And just make sure you're not the team letting the team stick around long enough to pull out a win on you. So,
Very interesting. Okay. Well, fantastic. So growing up, so you got into the D1 sport thing. I want to kind of fast forward to post-graduation. What did you major in, and where did life's journey take you from that point?
Graduated actually in 3 years with an accounting degree.
Okay.
And immediately I had a job lined up ready for me when I graduated. So I started work as an internal auditor.
Ooh.
It's as fun as it sounds.
Yeah, absolutely.
In oil and gas, because that's what you do in Oklahoma.
For sure.
And it was a very large company at the time. And I went in there bright eyes. I'm out of college. I have my job. Like, kind of like was talked about, you have your grand plan, but then, but again, there was this thing that always stood in the back of my brain. I'd seen my mom be a stay-at-home mom, and I have always wanted to be a mom. And that's another part of my story of delayed gratification, because you have plans and visions in place, and that did not happen on the timeline I was expecting it to. But after college, I got into the job, and it was less than a month, and they'd already sent me on a field audit and stuff, and I was like, I cannot picture myself in 5 years from now sitting in this office. And I had an office. It wasn't even a cubicle. But I just can't imagine myself boxed in. And I think some of that's the athlete side, that you can continue having ambition. And it wasn't as much a thing, I think, for women back then. So it wasn't that I had a ton of examples, but I just fully believed there was a way to have ambition as a woman and have something for you to work towards while having the mom side, and that it wasn't one or the other. And so that was something I held on to. And then 3 months after graduation, we had a family reunion that I almost didn't make it to because of wildfires. They were cutting off all my routes home, because I did not live in my hometown anymore. I'd moved to Oklahoma City, the other side of the state. And Bill and Julie Toth were there. And they're big time leaders in New Skin. And I did not know it was New Skin that they did. I just knew their lifestyle. And had always respected them. And they were there, which they're from out of state, so I didn't see them often. I did not go in there with the intention to ask them what they did, but I ended up asking them. And after the reunion, they introduced me to New Skin. And so it was very quickly after graduation. And I started then in August. So 3 months after graduating in May, I started in August with New Skin.
So I'm curious, though, for an internal auditor, and we have several within our company. They're generally, and I don't mean to overgeneralize, but generally speaking, I would say more adverse or skeptical to opportunity, skeptical to something that's less traditional than that. So why did that intrigue you, talking with Bill and Julie? I mean, obviously the lifestyle component, but why did that red flag not tick for you as an internal auditor? Were you never supposed to, did you study the wrong thing? Like, did you get done and you're like, I totally just wasted 3 years because I'm never going to be that? No. Why were you not skeptical, I guess? You know,
one of the things that stood out, well, number one, I have such a big trust of them because they are family and I respect them so much. So I went in with that trust already built. So whether they're family or friend or whatever, the relationship matters. But I also saw we were publicly traded, and that spoke my language. And so I was like,
I can audit these guys.
Essentially. And I tell people that I was like, I can trust what I'm seeing and I can go find it myself. I don't have to just take what they give me. But I can know for a fact it's valid. Otherwise, we could all do what we want. And like, we can, for lack of a better way, sue New Skin for false information. And so that spoke my language. That validated that. But then I will also just fully admit, I was a naive 21-year-old who didn't know the skepticism of our industry because my parents had not been involved ever. And so it was like I had just never been exposed to the industry. But here it was presented through New Skin. And it started to connect the dots to the vision I had always had. And so it was like a no-brainer.
And I don't even know that it's an industry thing as opposed to simply just any startup venture has odds of success. And so when you do that at scale, whether that's franchise, whether that's insurance, whether that's real estate agents, whether that's, it's just you have then startup at scale. And so your success rates and your failure rates, it's a natural effect. And that's something we won't go off on that.
And I will add, because that kind of triggers something is, because I'm not always a huge risk taker. And that is a risk.
Big time.
But at the same time, coming back to my work ethic and just knowing myself and my mentality, like we've had this theme of all in here for New Skin, and I connect to it so much because when I decide on something, a relationship, new
That's it.
skin, etc. Like I truly am all in. And so I was all in when I decided new skin. And again, I had seen Bill and Julie. I saw the information they presented to me. And so it was like 1 + 1 = 2 to me.
Yeah.
And so then it was just a matter of, I'm going to be coachable like I was in soccer. And so I knew how my soccer career had started, but it's like that didn't define where I ended. And so I just went with that same approach without even processing it that way, if you will. But yeah.
That's very interesting. Okay. So you got going, and it was an instant success because of your your long-term goal, delayed gratification, and your grit, and then your great personality. And so at 21, you started, and it's never looked back, never doubt, and you've just moved forward. That's been the journey, right? Yeah. What happened? Tell us about the journey as you got in.
So 2012, I did not know how we were building a new skin business. So I literally started from square one and learning about making contacts and what that looked like, and showing people.
And you had mentors, right?
I had mentors. The best mentors, and I may be biased at their family, but they are truly some of the best in our company.
Yeah, Julie's a powerhouse.
They are just the best humans, and they stuck with me from day one. And I'm sure some of the days they were like, what a project we have on our hands. But no, I was never fast, especially in the beginning, even in our initial qualification for our first promotion. I took the full length of time that it took. But again, I never got down on myself because, again, I was in the game, and I never let myself not be in the game. So it was a lot of grind. I will say there was one turning point, and again, this is a part of my story I don't remember to share very often, but it was almost a year in the business. Oklahoma got hit by some tornadoes, a lot. Like there were 17 tornadoes in a couple of days. And my parents were actually hit by one during that span, and they were okay, but their neighborhood had several totaled homes. And what happened was we have done natural disaster relief with New Skin and Force for Good and Vitamil wrapping into that. Well, I was reached out to, and that included some of the company. And that connected me to the heart of New Skin, and it like chinked into not just it being a transactional thing for me. And it started to bring it just deeper. Because that's something I have always in my life kept locked down. More so, I'm not a wear my heart on my sleeve person. I'm more so than I used to be. Being a mom does that to you. But that was my first taste of it. And that started to shift. Now, again, my business didn't change overnight from that, but it was just methodical. And I used our programs, etc. So just used benchmarks to reach up to standards. And then it was attrition that happens and come and go, and having to learn that that's okay. You have teammates on a soccer team that like have attrition in and out too. So my first 4 years were very traditional network marketing tactics. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. They are foundational principles of connecting to new people, etc., and talking to them, building relationships, etc. But I got to a point, and this is what I was sharing just the other day with some of our New Skin leaders here in town, is I got to a point where it was just like, what has to give? Because I'm now 3-4 years in, and I'm still all in, but I'm also not stupid. Like, we can't just keep going at this rate.
Right. It's not going to work.
No. And I also felt a bit like a fish out of water, because I could probably have named a handful of other millennials in the business at that time. It was just a different landscape. And so, which I was never intimidated by that. I saw it as an opportunity. And
can I ask you, so 3 to 4 years in, and what had you achieved so far? Like, what milestones had you actually achieved by that point?
I'd earned 3 of our success trips. So you had to earn those by earning titles. So I had earned those, which come to find out helped me in attracting some of my teammates years later. And that helped, again, stay in the game for me.
Yeah.
Then I did reach the top of our compensation plan, Blue Diamond, at that time, but it was instantly gone. There was no leadership creation or anything inside of that. It was a shell of a title, if you will. And that was where I actually hit like my most, if I hit a defeated line, that was it. Because you reached what seemed like such a high standard, but the results and the rewards that you're aspiring for were not coinciding.
And you said it was hollow. Did you know it was hollow?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was kind of like just kidding myself in a way.
Yeah.
But again, it was just such blinders on, just keep moving forward. And it was all during that period about me.
Yeah.
Like, how can I have this person serve my outcome, etc. So it was also a very immature approach.
But kind of a life's lesson type of thing, right? Yeah, I think the way it reminds me of like our the drive for show, putt for dough golf philosophy. I kind of feel like that. Like when you go for titles or accolades in life in general, it's hollow, as you said. It's more like, we're driving for show, but the real value is the putting for dough, right? It's like actually creating value in people's lives and building up. So what shifted in your mind? So you get to that point, you've built something. It's like it feels completely hollow. It then collapses because there's no foundation to it, and you have a decision to make, right? Am I going to do it again, or did you just, or was it not a decision? It was like, I'm going to rebuild.
Well, it was no question. I was.
Okay, so it was never like, maybe I need to go back to that internal audit job.
No, that was the fire that I refused.
That was
to
the
go
fear.
Back.
Okay.
Because one, I refused to be a quitter, and I refused to be considered a failure.
Okay.
And to me, maybe no one else would have said those, but I would have thought that of myself. And I've never done that in my life. And I refused when I had seen statistics and stuff that just if you stayed in the game long enough.
Well, and the power of your mentor too, because I can't imagine Julie would have let you.
Every single day, they were there with me.
That's
good and bad days. And that helps so much more than people realize.
Well, no, I think it's
essential.
Maybe it's 80 or 90% of the success.
Yes.
I really do. I think we could correlate, we could quantify. There's a stat in the business that nearly 70%, 68% of new leaders in our company, if they lose their title, 68% say it's because they don't have a mentor teaching them or helping them through that. So that's like 7 out of 10. So it's 70%.
Wow.
At least 70%. But so that was the motivation to say, we're not going to do that again. But then now you have to go rebuild. And so how did you approach the second time?
The podcast is called Empower.
Yeah.
That was a very empowering moment of my life. And this was summer of 2016. So I'm about 4 years into the business, and someone who is a mentor of both of us, Scott Shore, he sat me down. We both were in Dallas for a new skin event, and we had been watching social selling start emerging.
Yeah. So this was 2016-ish.
Yeah.
15.
Yeah. And this was the new thing, not just to new skin, but to the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was such a revolutionary thing, and it was something that we had been watching for about a year, but it had not made its way, at least in the new skin world, very much, maybe trickling a little bit.
Mostly in Europe. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Very much in the UK.
Yes. But that started to speak some of my language, because flash back to some of what had led me to ask Bill and Julie about new skin originally was Facebook posts of trips that they would take. And so later I found out those were new skin trips.
Yeah.
And so that spoke my language, and I'm a millennial. So like, again, social media is like our thing.
You don't have to brag, says the Gen Xer.
I will gladly claim it. But it was really weird here at Live seeing
Isn't it
a
crazy?
lot of Gen Zs. I was like,
no, it's crazy.
I was the young one in the room.
It's so cool though. It's
it
so
is.
cool.
And it made me like,
we're literally 4.0. We're on the 4th generation.
it's incredible to see. And I think
We're
it's
Gen
valuable.
X, millennial, now Gen Z.
I think it's such a rich thing.
Yeah. Completely.
But so he challenged me, and he just said, it's time for this to come here, and you need to be the one, like, you're ready to do this, but you need to let everything go that you've done and start over. Like, he looked me in the eye and said that. And I was like, if I didn't have the trust in Scott, I don't know that I would have grabbed on. But it was also the timing for me. So I tell people my business and my life didn't just change because I started using social selling or social media in my business. It was, I was ready. I was at that time. I'd matured. I'd learned. It's kind of just entrepreneurship in general is that 3 to 5 year window. You hear statistics on how long they succeed or not. I was at my 4-year mark. So it was, I was ready. I was more open than I had ever been, more vulnerable than I had ever been. And so I was like, we got to go. And then, you know what? Again, an all-in kind of a moment. I didn't look back because I trusted that if I went in, I saw a little bit of a track record happening over in Europe. I wasn't handed a playbook. No.
But you started following some of them and looking at what they're doing.
From there. So a little bit of observation, but then just instincts. And honestly, that's the most fun I've ever had in my business was during that time. And that creates
really exploring.
Which is not a normal thing for me, but I felt so empowered for it. And I mean, we just started and it was like, okay, this kind of like did something. So let's repeat and see if we start to have a trend. And like my analytical side started kicking in.
The T accounts start to balance.
Well, I won't go that far. But it was so cool. And we went and we did start from scratch. And, you know, then I mentioned Abby earlier. We've known each other since we were in middle school through soccer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We played soccer together. And
who was better?
Different positions. No, Abby was phenomenal.
What position did you play, by the way?
I was a defender. So someone more in the background. She was more of an attacker.
Forward.
She was more a midfielder, so she played a little bit of both. But genuinely, like a great teammate back then. And she was one of my first AP24 customers.
She became the AP24 smile.
She did. Worldwide. And
and I have to tell you, by the way, so it was,
I remember.
You heard the story about Steve Lund?
No.
So Steve.
Oh boy.
It was actually a funny moment. I'd been commuting back and forth from Japan doing some strategy stuff for Truman, and I bump into Steve. So this is 2017 or 8, whatever. And we were going through some information for the board, and AP24, which is our whitening toothpaste, had literally gone from like 20,000 units a month in sales to 2 million units a month. So we're walking out of this meeting, and Steve's like blown away, and he's like, "Guys, we've had this product since like 1990. I forget when AP24 was founded. It was like one of the first products that I saw as a new employee in the 90s." And he's like, this isn't even one of our new products.
No.
And it was flying off the shelf, which, by the way, kind of demonstrates the power of social and social building, because we see products all the time because you guys do this. You'll find this, we have 600 products or whatever, and somebody will find some weird tweak on it. No, it's not toothpaste, Ryan. It's a tooth whitening system for only $20. And I'm like, well, that's true, because if I buy the thing, that's like $200. So, but you guys do this all the time anyway. So you find Abby. She gets involved.
She does after she's
your partner.
And she comes in and we started running together, and she didn't realize how new we were in this world of it. But again, kind of like I'd been with Bill and Julie. Trust. And so we just used instincts to move forward, and so many of the aspects that built our business and still do to this day. She and girls that she started bringing on board are where the origins happened. I just look back and it's kind of mind blowing.
It's so crazy. I mean, I literally sit, because I've been in the company 29 years, right? So this is my 4.0. Like, I've seen the business transform. I look at this event and who's on stage, how they're building the business, what their mindset is. It is so. It's same, but extremely different. Meaning, it's entrepreneurship, it's dedication, it's goal setting, it's grit, it's all those things. But the way the how is so different. I mean, it's like top downs, bottom up, right to left, left to right, however you want to describe it. It's so different, and yet it's working like crazy. So what did Julie and Bill, like when you came in, and by the way, how cool is that you had another mentor from the company side saying, hey, go try this thing. So what happened when you got into it with Julie and Bill and said, hey, I'm going to try this path. It's working in the UK. They were all in.
They were actually.
They didn't try to shove you or force you back into the bubble. And you're out of that.
Like,
this is how we make McDonald's hamburgers. Get back in the.
No, they were spread your wings. You do what you like. They
that's cool.
Me.
That's
cool.
I
know that's very unique. And again, that's a two-way street of trust. And they deserve so much credit for that.
100%.
They were in the trenches just like they'd been in the early years. They were in the trenches for that, but they also acknowledge this may not be our wheelhouse. We can't necessarily say this is the next step, but we're going to learn it with you.
Yeah. But I can't tell you. So I mean, and I want to give them a shout out for that, because I can't tell you the number of conversations I have around the world. Like literally, I've had a dozen in the last 3 months sitting down with very successful leaders around the globe who are seeing these patterns arise in their teams, and they're saying, don't do that. Don't go there. That's not our business. You will not be successful. And they're actually doing exactly what you just said, the opposite of what Julie and Bill did, which was clearly what you're doing is not working for you. Yeah. Go spread your wings and figure it out, because that's actually entrepreneurship.
Yes.
And so it's really interesting, exactly what you're saying. I see this happening over and over and over around the world. And it's so, I mean, it's human nature for all of us to want to shove everyone into this, look at the world through our own paradigm.
Yes.
But you can't, first of all, generationally, we absolutely can't do that.
Yeah.
A millennial and a Gen Xer and a baby boomer and a Gen Zer, we just see the world differently. But no matter what we do to try to force a Gen Zer to look at the world the way the millennial looks at the world, it's slightly off tilt. It's just not going to work. So how do you see this now in your team? Because you've been going at this thing how many years now?
Coming up on 12.
12. You are hitting the generation mark, right? So in corporate world, we do leadership succession planning, and I call it generational planning. It's a 10-year gap. So Truman looking at me, right? It's like 10 years, 14 years, whatever. But you have to plan that way, because if you don't, you're going to set the company up to fail.
Right.
In the Salesforce side of things, it's the same thing, right? You have a millennial group that does the business this way, and you guys don't use Snapchat and TikTok, and you're not dancing the products away. No. But on Gen Z, that's all they know. How do you navigate that now? And using the same lesson of Julie to you of saying, go spread your wings, and yet when it's unfamiliar, Julie can't coach you on the how, but she can coach you on the why and the what.
Right.
But just the how you go do it, you got to go figure it out. Is that the approach, I guess?
I think so. And I mean, that's something we're navigating as we go right now. And I think it's learning how to, as a leader, and I'm speaking this for myself to keep learning this.
Like real time.
It's an ego check for a leader.
Yeah, for sure.
First of all, and I relate it to parenting, is you don't want to keep your kid back. Like, you want your child to learn and grow and thrive and succeed, because at the end of the day, like, that's what you want most for them. So you can't say, no, I don't want you to do it that way, unless it's obviously dangerous or anything like that. But if that's just the way that they want to go, then to me, I don't understand withholding them from where they're being called. And so within my team, I work on this, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at this at all, but I really look for my leaders to take ownership. And we've been reading the book, Take Ownership, or Extreme Ownership. Oh my gosh, that book is incredible. I'm actually rereading it. It's so good.
Jocko Willink's book.
Gosh, everybody should read it.
Principles are amazing.
But like, there's something for you to own, but also as a leader, and they teach this in the book, is how to let them lead down the line. Because also sometimes your role as a leader becomes, it doesn't mean you're taking your foot off the gas pedal, doing your own growth, but leading what you do have as an organization or a team, that your role may be more visionary.
Yeah.
And let them really dig in the trenches and build those deeper relationships with their teams, because at the end of the day, if you make it all, it has to end and begin with you.
That's right.
Then one, that's a really heavy weight. I tried that my first 4 years. I didn't have anything to show for it. I had a shell. And so I have my own not example versus when I started to shift. And it's also more fun.
Yeah.
Like, as much fun as I had on stage, I loved it. I will not be bashful about saying it. I loved that because I know what my journey's done. And I really did feel like I'd been brought to that.
Yeah.
But then I had 2 of my girls that got to speak too.
Yeah.
That was even more fun because I got to see them have their own like butterfly moments. And so like you have to empower people to step into that. Otherwise you're keeping a cap on them.
Yeah.
And I mean, I said this from stage, but I believe we all are created with a unique calling. And if you're the one muting them, you're withholding them from something far greater than you. And who am I to do that to somebody? And like, we each speak a different language. And so when Allie and Lizzie were each on stage, they delivered way differently than I would have, but clearly they were meant for that message in that moment because there were at least somebody in the crowd that's going to connect to their voice, not mine. And so I just tie it all back to that. And I try to remind myself of that in the day-to-day within team building in New Skin. And then now as a mom with my son too, as he's starting to grow and have a personality a little bit. It's just something I want people to be able to step into theirs, and I want them to have the same experience that I got to have, that Bill and Julie allowed me, that my parents from the very beginning did for me. I mean, I was raised with the saying, your best days are ahead of you. And to never lose sight of that, never lose faith of that. And I just have such a fire to inspire people into that, but then they got to go get into their best days. I can't take them to it, and I can't keep taking them to it. So,
I mean, this to the point, right? The word empower, right, sits at the heart of our mission statement. It would be a force for good by empowering people to improve lives. But to your early statement about it's an ego check for all of us, because the more successful we become, we think we're right and we think our way is right.
And you get lots of recognition.
Yeah, you get recognition to reinforce that. But how would it be as leaders to be recognized for the number of people we've helped achieve their dream, their ambition, their goal, as opposed to what we want them to achieve? And you've related so many things to parenting, which I know you're now a new mother of what, 18 months?
He's almost there.
Almost 18 months, 16 months, something like that. What's his name?
Connor. He's the best.
And what
I waited a long time for him.
What have you correlated? I mean, everything you've been talking about sounds like parenting, right? I mean, I'm just sitting here checking the boxes of the lessons learned in parenting, right? But
I remember hearing.
What has been the correlation between the business and now being a new mom?
I feel like the business prepared me for parenting. And I heard top New Skin leaders say that for years and years and years. And so in some ways, I felt like I was getting some of the traits. And I mean, part of my story is I thought it would be kind of the traditional thing, like in Oklahoma. I would find a great guy and get married and have kids before 30. Well, I got married the year I turned 30. And then we waited to have Connor a couple years later. So that was delayed gratification too. But parenting to the business, I mean, it's all connected. You learn how to unconditionally love somebody and that you are their provider. And I connect that to my team. Like, I'm there to be their leader and I'm there to love them. I'm there to help guide them. But they do have to learn to walk on their own 2 feet. They're going to fall down sometimes. Sometimes some tough love or some discipline. I don't discipline my team, but sometimes they got to hear a hard truth because some of the leaders on my team say this, and I agree with it, is to be unclear is to be unkind. And so if you're not real with people and you just, oh, you're awesome, no big deal, all this thing, like, again, you're not holding somebody to what their potential is. And at the end of the day, that's falling short of leadership, and it's falling short in parenting, in my opinion, if you're not helping someone grow. If you just let them get comfortable in being told they're awesome, no matter what they do. And you got to learn to how to have the grit and the principles that I learned growing up from my family and in sports, etc. Gosh, that would be a whole other episode. I feel like to go through all those principles.
We could do a series, like the 12 series of learnings through.
Oh,
so,
yes.
no, but that's that. I mean, you're right. We should do that again. So I know I'm conscious.
Can I add one more thing
Please,
on parenting?
please.
Is that you're never going to quit on your kid.
Yeah.
You're never going to say, I quit being your mom or your dad. And so that's an all-in mentality too. And I believe it's the same in relationships, etc. And so same thing in the business. Just because somebody was mean to you on your team, let's say, or you had a disagreement, or they had a bad day and they ripped your head off, you don't quit on your team. Don't quit loving them. You just say, you know what? They might have had a bad day. Or I might have been the one with the bad day. But you show up the next day and you're a team, no matter what. Just like with my son, I am his mom, no matter what he does. And I love him to pieces. I mean, you as a mom give up a lot of yourself to have a child. But again, you're never not in it with them.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I agree. I think there's like so many parallels, and there's so many life lessons along the way that we could spend hours on. And maybe we should, David. We should just keep going for hours. You can skip everything. But okay. So just as we kind of move it forward, there's maybe a couple of things I would ask you. And so before I kind of ask you the final question, which is all about really effectively, what's your life mission? Like what does that become? So be thinking about that, right? And have you framed that? Because I know every time, another funny story about you is the first time that you and I got to know each other, you texted me like within, I think the first conversation we had, oh, hey, Ryan, by the way, here's my Team Elite goal, the number of Team Elites I want to have in the next trip. And I was like, great, right? And then I realized like you just are, again, goal setting is your thing. And then, bump into you a little while later. It's like, here's my goal for this year. This is my goal. You always have a goal driving, that you're driving towards. So, but I would like to know what your life goal is. So be thinking about that. Before we get there, I'm going to ask you, what does the role of faith and your belief system have in this business? Because you've referenced to faith, you've referenced to a calling, that you believe each of us have a gift, a calling. So touch on that a little bit. What is that in this business for you?
To me, it's the foundation to it all. And I think it stems back to, again, another thing my parents said so often, and I loved what Jesse said earlier today about words have power, is because I believe that to my core, and it's biblical, is there's power of life and death in the tongue. And so I'm very careful about words I say. You'll never hear me say I'm dying, like when people reference that in terms of laughing. I will never say that because I'm not going to speak death like that. My parents raised my brother and I saying, you're blessed to be a blessing. And again, that never fully resonated until I got older. And this business actually started to help put those pieces together for me. And it wasn't until after I made that huge shift in my business to social selling, to taking the focus off of me, starting to focus on other people. And that's where my business grew. And blessed to be a blessing. And as you have more blessings, more rewards, you can in turn bless more. And to me, we're on this planet for a specific calling. We're on this planet not just to live in our own little bubble, to keep our skill sets, our talents to ourselves. It's meant to be spread elsewhere. I had no idea when I started social selling that years later I would be on a stage in Jakarta, Indonesia, speaking for New Skin, and it would hit me. I was speaking in a country that my faith of Christianity is so much the minority. Like I think it was 3%.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to be a light
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me literally as I was on stage in that moment.
Good.
And as they started to follow me on social media, then it's not just that moment. Then you get to start living out a greater purpose even outside of New Skin.
Yes, so much so.
And use that platform. And again, we're called into these different callings that it may not be part of your original plan or what you envisioned originally. But again, if you're stepping into it, you can't deny it either. And it just starts to feel so natural. And I'm not someone that grew up very outspoken about my faith. I knew where I stood, but this business has actually grown my faith more to where I can't keep it to myself anymore, because I've literally seen what happens when I surrendered to God's purpose for me. And that his timing greater than mine didn't mean I left behind my goals or my timing or urgency, I should say, towards goals and that ambition. And that I believe everything that if you feel a calling or a dream, he placed that there. And again, that was said today from stage, is that just because it takes longer to get there doesn't mean it's not the direction. I could have said that multiple times in my life already. And I'm only 33, but I could already point to several places that I could have put my own time frame and nope, that must not have been what God wanted me to do. But he'll close the door if it's meant to be closed. And so I just have such a purpose and such a drive, I should say, towards wanting people to understand they're here for a reason. And they may not know what it is, but it can be unlocked. And I think it's so cool how New Skin Opportunity does empower people to unlock those. It's so unique how they can intersect. And our team is very outspoken on our faith, but it's also part of the mentorship that comes in, is people just get to be surrounded. And then that empowerment, again, it's like a butterfly effect. They just start to spread their wings, and then you start to see them be good human beings. And then that goes with our mission to be a force for good. And it's just this ripple effect that to me is undeniable. And I just see so many interventions that have happened over my 12 years in the business, and even how I came to be a New Skin, and just so on and so forth, that it's like it's everything to me.
It's it's a beautiful concept, and we normally do global lives, but because of COVID, the visas are still backed up, so we had to do East and West this year. And a month from now, we're going to go sit with 12,000 people in Incheon, Korea, going through that event. And that's one of the blessings I've seen of this business is it is so much bigger than, it's almost like it's a humanity-based business. As you said, you're over in Jakarta, Indonesia, presenting to that group who has very different belief systems. And by the way, amazing, wonderful people who believe in the same value system that we all have, and we're in the West, maybe more of a Judeo-Christian side, and yet everyone comes together with this common mission of being a force for good. And so uniting forces like that, to me, are so powerful. And speaking of, trips and all of that, one of the moments I had in Abu Dhabi, and so I'm 50, right? And we stop at the Blue Mosque, and as we were driving, we got this tour guide, and my brother and I were going around with him around the Blue Mosque, and we got totally sidetracked on this 3-hour conversation about Muslim, Judaism, and Christianity, and the similarities in the belief system. Of course, there's differences, but it's like you're all kind of looking at the same thing, but just from a different angle. And what sits in the center is this belief of a higher purpose, a higher being, a humility that comes with that, and then also the blessings. Call them blessings, call them karma, calling whatever, that when you look at the world as through that lens, whichever lens, it's this beautiful place that we're all here to help each other have a better life experience. So if you can be involved in something like that, find it and do it. And it's, no offense to internal audit, it's hard to sometimes find that purpose. So, okay, so let's get to the final question because we're all going to have to rush to get out to all things. So I gave you a little bit of a foreshadowing. You talked about everyone's put on this planet with a purpose, a mission, what is your, and maybe I already know, it sounds like, but what's your life mission, and what is your goal to achieve that mission? And so when I say the goal, I mean, is there a quantifiable measurement that you would use for that?
I don't know that I've taken it to the quantifiable level yet, but becoming a mom changed some of the perspective. I feel such a draw to, again, helping women. And this is not just from a Nu Skin standpoint, but it's also from taking care of yourself standpoint, is empowering women to know that the past notions that you can only be focused on your family to be considered a good mom, I don't believe in.
Yeah.
Because if you don't take care of yourself, I don't believe you can be your best self with your family. And so I feel such a draw in this current season of life, at least, to show that taking care of yourself is a part of the equation, that you can be present with your family. But my family's not here at this event with me, but that doesn't make me a bad mom.
No.
He got to have quality time with his dad and grandma and great aunt.
Yeah.
And so, again, that's showing.
That's important. Yeah.
It's a well-rounded thing that, yes, do I want to be with him all the time? And I am every day.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I got to let him spread his wings.
Yeah.
And so as a mom, you need to spread your wings too. And you don't have to be a parent to even need to have that approach in life too. You can't only be one thing. And again, if you're going to be your best self, to step into your calling and into your purpose, then part of that is the self-care side. And as moms, that is something that even today is still very much, I have come to find out, is still very much something that people kind of look down on you if you do that. You're kind of fighting against the grain a little bit. Not as much as you probably were back even 5 years ago. But even still, there's still this underlying vibe. And I refuse to not show there's a different way.
Yeah.
And that I'm all in on my family, and I'm just as all in.
Yeah, I was going to say and.
Yeah, it's not a but.
No,
it's not an either or. No. And if I'm with one, does not mean that I prioritize one over the other, because I believe they coexist. Yeah. I'm a better mom because I take care of myself, because of what I do with my Nu Skin team, what I do with our church, etc., and vice versa.
Yeah.
And then also me becoming a mom has helped me be better with Nu Skin. So again, the coexisting. And so from a quantifiable standpoint, I don't have an answer on that quite yet. I'll have to get back to you.
Just say a million moms.
Let's go with that.
Just start with a million moms. That'll be a good goal.
If it's one mom, that's a huge
start one by one,
because it's a life changer.
No, it is, and you're interesting. Kathy walked in a second ago, and she and I have this conversation all the time, or at least multiple times around. That's Kathy's belief as well, right? I'm so intrigued as a father of two daughters, who absolutely am with you. Like there is zero.
I loved hearing her say that from stage. That was her all in.
That's her all in. I said, think about it. So she had it. But this whole thing is about and what I love about Nu Skin, I will say that, right? Whoever's listening to the podcast, we have a lot of people that are not Nu Skinners that listen to the podcast. Nu Skin's unique because me personally, I come to these environments, I don't even have that thought in my head.
No.
That someone who's here, if their child's at home with their dad or with their grandparents or with their uncles or aunts, that's a trade-off decision. And I love that it's not just like they used to say shatter the glass ceiling.
Yeah.
It's dissolving the shattered pieces of the glass ceiling. Like it shouldn't even be a consideration.
I agree.
Because the only way we show up for anyone is to be whole ourselves. And that should never even be a thing. So I love that that's your mission. And I love that you're living by example and leading by example, and your team's that way. Like everyone that spoke, they share that. So
I will say, our founders are where that core comes from.
For
like,
sure.
look at Sandy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like the essential example of mom and ambition.
Yeah.
And look at what she's done. She's like the new skin mom for all of us. And so like when I do coaching calls with my girls and they're like, I'm so sorry, my kid, they were supposed to be at nap time, but it didn't work out. And I always say to them, I go, you don't apologize for your kids. It's real life.
Yeah.
We're fine. My kid's probably going to pop in too. So it's a beautiful thing, and it should never be, like you said, I'm glad it's not, because there are kids here.
Yeah.
And I think it's a wonderful thing. And I've actually had several people that are newer on the team when they come to an event of some kind, whether it's a team one or a new skin one, corporate wise, they're like, I think it's so cool how the families are included even here. Yeah. And that they walk the stage with their parents. Like it's another all-in kind of mentality. Yeah. Yeah. Bring it all, right? Yeah. We want everyone. So it's all good. Well, Rebecca, it's amazing visit with you, and thank you for taking the time. I know we've got stuff going on, but just want to say what an inspiration you are, and what a pleasure you are to work with. From the company side, you just are. Your note this morning, you are always such a reinforcing, positive force for good. So thanks for doing that, for being that, and for speaking it live. It was awesome. Thank you for having me. Okay, thanks everybody. I don't have any skeletons that I know of, unless you help me find them.
I'll help you find. Don't worry. We go real deep.
We're all gonna know.
We say.